Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rover Metals live corporate webinar. This is Will Mays from RBMG. Rover Metals is listed on the TSXV Venture Exchange under the symbol ROVR and on the OTCQB under the symbol ROVMF. Joining us today is the company's CEO, Judson Culter. Mr. Culter will be providing an update on the current operations and upcoming milestones, including progress on the Nevada-based Tobin Gold and project and its flagship Cabin Gold asset, as well as reviewing the recent financing. At the end of the presentation, we'll be opening up for question and answers for management to address. If you're interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions to us directly in the Q&A module. Please note that this presentation is being recorded today, Wednesday, May 4th, 2022, and will soon be made available on the company's website at rovermetals.com. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of the events anticipated by forward-looking statements will occur, or if they do occur, what benefits the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of control of the company. Rover has a full disclaimer contained in their presentation. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or broker-dealer. For information, please visit rbmilestone.com. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Judson Culter, Chief Executive Officer of Rover Metals. Judson, it's your stage.
Well, thanks for having me. And we'll start, I guess, at the top of the hour here, just walking through our updated Q2 corporate presentation. So I've got my my screen shared here, and I'll jump in on that. So as you can see at the very bottom of the slide, we've added Carlin Gold System opportunity. So that sort of dovetails in with the news release from yesterday regarding us starting exploration work in Winnemucca, Nevada at our Tobin Gold project. So that'll be a part of the presentation that I don't think a lot of investors have seen before. So jumping ahead to the next slide, quick disclaimer. All right, so we operating now actively with two exploration programs running, both in Northern Canada, in Northwest Territories, as well as in Northern Nevada in the Battle Mountain region. Just as a whole, so that's two of our 5 gold projects that are currently seeing exploration. Then, of course, we've got three other additional gold projects in the portfolio. 4 of our 5 projects are located in the Northwest Territories, and the Northwest Territories remains a relatively underexplored jurisdiction in Canada in terms of there's just great potential for big discoveries in high grade. And then again, of course, the new addition, which I talked about at the top of the hour, Tobin Gold, in the Battle Mountain district of Nevada, where, as you'll see as we get into the presentation, it's seen probably the highest level of consolidation in the gold mining sector in the past 3 to 4 years. So great jurisdictions, politically safe, all have infrastructure, and of course we're close to major mining activity with all of our assets. So that's the overview of the company. As you said, Will, we are traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange. Our ticker on the venture is ROVR. We trade on the OTCQB under ROVMF. And last but not least, on the Frankfurt under the symbol 4XO. Just a quick who's who of our management team and our directors and advisory board. Myself, I've been in the mining industry for over 10 years. Helped to raise capital of over 25 million now, and so that's sort of my number one role, if you will, and also overseeing a very strong technical team. I'm not a geologist by training, so I obviously rely on our amazingly talented people involved in the company, including Dave White, who's a PGO and resident of Yellowknife, Keith Minty, professional engineer, mine engineer, resident of Toronto, and our experienced mining CFO, Oliver Fossey, who's based in Vancouver. Our technical team, includes additional people such as Robert Schaefer, Raul Sinibria, and several other geologists, both in Nevada as well as the Northwest Territories. We do have some new geologists that are not listed here that will be part of the phase 1 drill program in Winnemucca at Tobin. And those guys, I can just list off their names, is Rick Strife, as well as Rick Walker. So really excited to be having those gentlemen join our team as well. And, just with Rick Strife's background, Rick's considered to be a, top Carlin epithermal gold deposit type geologist. So very familiar with Nevada. Just I'm going to jump ahead now to jurisdiction of the Northwest Territories, where we're working. We're still in the midst of our phase 3 drill program at our Tobin Gold project, which is located in the Northwest Territories, just really the southern part of the Northwest Territories on the highway system. That's Highway 3 from Yellowknife. So really the endowment, I think, of where we're working, when I'm talking in terms of 120 square kilometers, which is a very strong gold jurisdiction that we're working in. There's been 14 million ounces of high-grade gold. We're talking 10, 12 gram per ton mined historically for the Con and Giant Mine in Yellowknife. Today, there's approximately 7.5 million ounces of proven gold deposits sitting in our neighboring competitors, if you will, the junior miners. Just rattle them off: Fortune Minerals, Nighthawk, Gold Terra, Gold Mining. All these companies have over 1 million ounces of resources. So I would say that we still are the newest junior miner in this jurisdiction. And we are still looking to bring our first maiden resource as a company. Tobin Gold still remains, the most likely candidate of our 5 projects for us to bring a resource. And, I think there's some questions that came in for this webinar about the timing of that resource. And I think, we don't have our assays back yet. We have some interesting results. We believe we've extended the high-grade arrow zone. But again, we don't have our assays. So for me to talk about timing of a resource estimate is still a little bit premature, but I'm sure we'll still get to it in the Q&A. And also with our work up there, I think, we still do have that potential to get to a resource that all of our neighbors do here, which is 1 million plus ounces. So I think there's still that potential for the Tobin project and the work we're doing up north. I might as well just talk about, so people have also put in questions about the Uptown Gold project. And so I think we'll talk about that in the Q&A as well. The Uptown Gold project is still within the 120 square kilometers right at Yellowknife. We have optioned off a 75% interest in that. And there's a company called Arctic Fox Resources that has completed a phase 2. But again, I think we'll get to that in the Q&A. Just acknowledging that question did come in before the presentation here today. All right, so focusing on the Tobin Gold project, and really this is an area map of our 4 projects in the Northwest Territories. So if you can see my mouse cursor, I'm by the Rover Gold logo right in the center top of the map. So we have the Tobin Gold project, the Sleeman Gold, and Camp Gold. These projects are, if you're going with the southern one, Tobin Gold, about 40 kilometers away from Fortune Minerals. Fortune Minerals is a development stage mining project that has a 20-year mine life of gold, cobalt, and bismuth. So 2 minerals that are on the Canadian critical minerals list, which are of high value and high importance as of the April budget. So I think the idea right now is for us to shepherd along our gold projects, knowing that there is a gold processor that will be constructed 40 kilometers away in the next 2 years. And so if you're following our press releases, the press release from I guess the middle of April, we talked about as a use of proceeds on our current financing, we're going to take the drill core from Tobin Gold, both from 2021 as well as from 2020, or this year, I should say, Q1. And we're going to do metallurgical testing. We've spoken with the CEO at Fortune. We've been given consent to engage SGS for metallurgical testing and to get the flow sheet from Fortune. Fortune built a pilot processing facility. They have a flow sheet for recovery rates of gold. And we intend to test the core from Tobin against that flow sheet, and that will give us some interesting metrics, I think, on a pro forma basis on what recovery and what sort of pro forma revenue could look like from a milling agreement, should we ever decide to do that. I think the reason we're chasing that down the rabbit hole is we want to continue to de-risk our projects. Of course, we still hope that there's a multi-million ounce potential, and we still believe in that. But we also realize that even a 250,000 ounce or 500,000 ounce resource with a processing agreement with Fortune would be an incredible win and great value to shareholders and to the company. I mean, 250,000 ounces of gold at these prices and these grades, we're averaging about 6 grams per ton. That's an incredible amount of gold already. And if we don't have to build a mine, it just remains an alternate scenario. Of course, we're still focused on the major discovery at the same time. So those comments are just regarding de-risking of the project. I want to talk about infrastructure next of the Tobin Gold projects. We have hydro, you can see on the map, strut, snare. So I would encourage people that are doing their due diligence, investors doing their due diligence, you can visit the Northwest Territories Power Corporation's website. You can see the work they're doing to try and bring additional power into the city of Yellowknife, which is down to the south in the map in the south corner there, the southeast corner. And what that means is if additional power is brought into Yellowknife through what's the Pulston Hydro Dam, they're talking about bridging through an underground cable, potentially under Great Slave Lake into Yellowknife. What that does is it frees up hydro close to us, which is snare and strut. So, that's something I think an interesting thing to follow for a mining investor. I think, you've got other mines outside of Fortune, other gold mines that are likely to be coming online in the next 2 to 5 years. Follow what Nighthawk's doing. Again, they're along the road infrastructure as well. So for Rover, which already has permitted a road on Russell Lake in the winter, and foreseeably could easily permit a summer road. It's not just one gold mine coming online in the near future. There's likely to be others besides Fortune, looking at Nighthawk to the north. Also just infrastructure for our Uptown Gold project. So if you're looking on the map, again, that's right in the city limits. It's right at the airport. We do retain a 25% interest in that project. I think Gold Terra, which has really done the branding for the city of Yellowknife with their Yellowknife City Gold project, they're at 2.2 million ounces now. They're a likely candidate for a mine as well. And I think the work they've done with the Con mine, obviously Newmont owns that, so they're optioning that and doing a great job in the city, right? Again, that's a 20-30 minute drive right from Old Town, if you will, in Yellowknife. So great infrastructure on these projects. I think in Tobin's case, we're just going to skip to focusing on the geology, I'll just talk about that a little bit. It is an iron formation hosted gold project. Geological comparables of historic mines. Lupin Gold Mine is a good example that operated in Nunavut, formerly the Northwest Territories, and the Homestake Gold Mine in South Dakota. I think a current geological comparable or analog would be Sabina Gold and Silver's Back River project. I think that would be a great comparable for the geology we're seeing at Cabin and the exploration model that we're following. So there's talking a little bit about infrastructure, the type of geology and some comparables. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide here. So the Cabin Gold project, as I mentioned, still remains our most likely asset for our maiden resource. And these are just summary of drill programs from 2020 and 2021. We don't have the 2022 results. We're 21 days or 4 weeks away from getting our first hole for 2022. Best case scenario, that would be the timing, assuming no backlogs or COVID. So this is still a recap of 2020 and 2021. I talked about us, this current drill program at Aerozone, where we've been able to extend that zone. And that's, the nature of iron formations is it's a discontinuous extension. These pods sort of pinch and swell kind of like a sausage. So we believe the Aerozone, as it's currently defined, is 120 meters of strike length, surface strike length. We believe we picked up where sort of the next pod, if you talk about a sausage type, gold lenses, we believe we picked up, at roughly 60 meters of depth, down plunge, the next part of the Aerozone. So that, again, that will be part, obviously, that is a forward-looking statement, and that will be subject to assays. But, that this particular zone is where we drilled 32 meters of 14 grams per ton. That particular hole was, right down dip. It wasn't intended to be that way, but when we were going and doing historic confirmation drilling, we did twinning holes, but also drilling oblique and really just trying to divine the zone and the direction of that zone. And what that hole did was really define the plunge direction. There's other holes there that were cross-sectional to these lenses that were, 22 meters of 8 grams per ton. And if you're looking at the Sabina Gold comparable or analog of the Back River project, this is, most likely these things you can follow sort of vertically rather than just down plunge. And so, I think there is some future, obviously, work that still needs to be done at Arrow if that model, which is that vertical model, so there's, again, this project is just getting started where we've got multiple zones with good grade at surface. The Beaver zone, we drilled that in 2021, and we more than doubled the historical grades. And there was a known issue in conflicting in the database between different labs and conflicting results. So I think we've proven that one of the labs certainly did have an error because we doubled the grades. The hypothesis for the 2022 Q1 drill program was that the Beaver zone actually extends 200 meters south, sort of parallel to Arrow along shore. And we did drill that. And I mean, that is part of the drilling that we've done so far this year. So again, we'll be sampling and assaying that, but we did see the iron formation and some arsenopyrites and some sulfides. Hasn't been assayed, but that anomaly did ring as a chargeable anomaly because of the sulfides. So that is why that was the hypothesis for drilling it. And then the Beaver zone prior to that extension was about 100 meters in surface strike. length. So now adding that to Arrow, you've got, about 200 meters of surface strike prior to obviously the drilling we've done this year in Q1. And then you've got the Andrew zone, which is, you can see the big outcrop and the big oval in the map here, multiple good intersects of, 7.5 meters, 1.6 grams per ton, 6.4 meters, almost 2 grams per ton. I think what's really neat about Andrew is the length of it is 800 meters. And, you've got in the south, you've got sort of folding and bending of the iron formation. So when we drilled it near surface, we were in and out of the iron formation and then back into it again. And similar story for Andrew North. So still a lot of targets open at depth. And if you add 800 meters to 200 meters, well, now you've got, across 3 zones, you've got 1,000 meters of surface mineralization. So, there's just still, this project is, just getting going, I think is fair to say. And, there's 2 IP anomalies that we did not drill in this program. And that's sort of this Andrew middle anomaly. If you look between the Beaver zone and the Andrew zone, you've got, about a 300 meter or 250 meter IP anomaly. And then there's another anomaly up called the Camp IP anomaly, which is on the primary limb of the Bug-Owl Iron Formation. And so that will be, those are future drill targets as well, and other potential discoveries. So really, I'll try and move ahead here and refocus on other projects in our portfolio. But this is just a really, a good update on the Cabin Gold project, which I know a lot of investors are following us because of our work there. So I think in terms of the target completion date of a resource, that given the market today, I think realistically, we need to drill another $4 or $5 million. Whether or not we've got an institutional financing that will happen this quarter in Q2 that would provide for that, that's obviously something management's working for. But I think it's more realistic to talk about a resource, as coming later in the year, just given a little bit of softening in access to capital in our industry. That's all. But I mean, I will say for sure, management is doubling down to try and raise institutional financing. And our goal is to try and drill be back here at Cabin this summer after breakup. Right now, things are melting, snow, ice, this and that. We're certainly, that's our milestone, if you will, is to try and raise some institutional money for summer drilling here at Cabin, to stay on track for that resource for the end of this year. All right, this is just, I've kind of talked about the Arrow Zone highlights. So this is where we drilled probably 80% of our drill program in Q1. So I'm just going to skip ahead. This is an example of what the drill core looks like from the Arrow Zone. Very highly sulfidized iron formation. This is also Beaver Zone. I talked about that as well already. This is, you can see, where we've really just tried to prove that this extends 200 meters to the south, and that will be subject to a future news release once we have the assays on that. The Andrew Zone, I'm not going to go into the Andrew Zone. So this was the sort of the conceptual winter targets at Arrow. This is you can see the changing colors here, the top close to 12 meters from surface. That's where the mineralization and the existing sort of defined ore shoot is. And then, we've drilled down plunge and really found out that the Arrow Zone, as it was known, does end. But then, if you think about a chain of sausages, kind of picks up again, and we believe we've picked it up again, at 60 meters of depth, where we think we found the next pod. And that again, the drills we were out over the lake. So this conceptual extension is underneath the lake. So we've, on top of the frozen ice, we were able to drill cross-sectional. So any news releases that come out, those releases will be like the cross-section of drilling through it rather than down plunge, right? So I think that's pretty significant, you know, in terms of, you know, if we get a 8 to 12 meter intercept, you know, again, that would be coming across it and, you know, potentially really positive for what we're trying to define at Arrow. The Beaver zone, similar story, where what we believed is there was, you know, sort of, if you can see here, they've sort of, our geologists modeled 2 sulfide trends. And so the 2 holes that we did at Beaver were meant to, you know, essentially cross-sect. And, you know, it's really important, I think, in iron formations to understand other alterations affecting the iron formation. And so, you know, LiDAR was also looked at, and in terms of, you know, like the placement of these holes where other structures may, you know, alter the iron formation. So that's our understanding of the project, and you know, how our geologists chose the holes for Beaver. So just looking at, you know, if you look and see here, the chargeability overlaid, you know, you've got that pink, you know, heat map, and you could see that's where, you know, we believe there were sulfides. And again, you know, we're going to have to get news releases out to talk more about this as we start to understand more. But the drilling program just recently has wrapped up, and now things like logging the core, looking at it, selecting assay results, those kinds of things is, you know, is where we are today. Lassonde curve. This is really, really important, I think, for Rover in terms of our investors that are looking at the price of our stock and understanding, you know, why we're priced there. You know, I think we're 4 years along the Lassonde curve. Arguably, one of those years was a lost year because we were locked up in an M&A transaction that the due diligence fell down on. So for 2019, we'd been focusing on an acquisition in Nevada that just didn't play out for us. So I think, you know, you could arguably say that Rover's really just 3 years along this Lassonde curve. But we're certainly moving up it. I think, you know, we're moving up, understanding now that this is a lot like Sabina's Back River project, understanding that, you know, other structures and alterations in the iron formation is really, you know, what we need to find. And, you know, that's where the highest grade gold. So, you know, and, you know, and I think it's also just the, you know, that the moving towards really a strategic investor remains our goal. I think there's been, you know, over close to $4 million in exploration put into the project now. And so there's really quite a large data package, and, you know, it really sets the stage for, you know, hope us courting an institutional or strategic investor, which is, you know, where things remain. So, you know, listen, moving up the discovery curve on the Lassonde curve, I think that's, you know, what we're in it for. Obviously, the excitement is the best years are ahead, you know, in terms of the discovery and, you know, the ounces and building that and getting our maiden resource out. So, you know, like that, you know, that's what lies ahead. You know, I've talked about on here as an alternate scenario, you know, which is, you know, going into a processing agreement. You know, that's an alternate scenario for us to essentially skip a mine development stage. But for now, we're just really focused on the next 1 to 2 years of discovery. And, you know, that's where the company is. All right, so I want to talk about a different jurisdiction following yesterday's news release in Nevada. Just for people and investors that may not be familiar with the jurisdiction of Battle Mountain, the level of consolidation, the endowment, the historical production, you know, let's talk about that now. So, you know, I think there's been 3 fairly large consolidation plays here you could talk about. Like the largest one, of course, would be the Newmont Barrick joint venture for the Phoenix mine. Kinross's acquisition, full acquisition. I think they started with 50%, but now they have 100 of the Gold Banks project. And then look what I-80 Gold has been doing in terms of acquiring projects in this jurisdiction. You know, they've acquired 3 projects, you know, right in this jurisdiction. So infrastructure, great, access to Winnemucca, skilled mining, you know, labor, as well as, you know, Reno is only, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours away. You know, access to RC drill rigs, you know, this is BLM land, you know, easy to work on. There's been, you know, if my calculations are correct, by pulling up the technical data for the Lone Tree mine, the Marigold mine, and the Phoenix mine, then, you know, there's been 6.5 million ounces of gold mined in this region since 1991. That was just based on data that was publicly available. And current gold resources of 9.8 million ounces held by these surrounding gold projects that you see on the map. So, you know, again, this is a Carlin epithermal multi-million ounce discovery potential for Tobin in a great jurisdiction and a low cost jurisdiction, which I think if people are aware of Rover's market cap in terms and number and our capital structure, this is really a great project for us to develop. It's a low cost project, a non-dilutive project, a project we can work at year round, you know. And again, it also really, you know, puts us on track with our marketing strategy for our US listing. And really just the, you know, the fact that we're really wanting to increase our branding and awareness as a company in Nevada, get a larger US OTCQB following because of our work in Nevada. And, you know, that just bodes well for our Canadian listing and our Canadian, you know, future of our Canadian projects as well. So we've added a gentleman by the name of Gary McDonald to our advisory team. You know, Gary's just spent the last like 10 years doing a lot of work in Nevada. And, you know, he started Beaver Gold as an example, knows the area really well. And so there could be, you know, there certainly is some deal flow that we're looking at as well in Nevada, and there could be some future projects that are coming, you know, down the pipeline here too. So that's a high level of the jurisdiction of Nevada, at least, sorry, I should say Battle Mountain of Nevada. What additional things do we like about this project? You know, I think it's just you know, the RC potential. Right now we're doing diamond drilling up north, and it can be as inexpensive as $1,000 a meter, depending on, like, things don't always go perfectly when you're doing exploration drilling in northern Canada. Things freeze, like water lines, this and that. So, you know, for us to be able to have, like, don't quote me on this, but $100 a meter RC drill program, you know, that's just really going to allow us to get good results and good bang for our buck. And, you know, tough market. So what when you've got a low cost exploration project, right? So, all right. So my contact details here. Again, just go visit the Rover Metals website, rovermetals.com. That's the best way to get in touch with us. I want to talk about just our capital structure. So Rover's just raised 1.7 million at 5 cents and 5.5 cents for flow through for Canadian eligible investors. That's 150 million shares outstanding today. That does represent the ownership, 100% of ownership of 4 gold projects, including Tobin in Nevada, and a 25% carried interest for Uptown Gold. It's subject to, we do have to issue 2.5 million shares in order to finalize that 25% interest in Uptown. I know that was a question as well. So, you know, listen, management and the insiders, you know, I think if you were to add in some loyalists that are no longer management, but co-founders of the company that still own a couple million shares, like, we're probably over 10 million, but they're just not currently part of management. But I know they're loyal shareholders and friends that were, you know, founders that are just no longer with us. So that that number in terms of what's owned by management and co-founders, you know, it's technically a little bit higher, but I'm just more following, you know, the letter of the law on that number. So currently the retail float is about 94% of you know, really what's outstanding. And you know, we still maintain you know, really, I think higher than average daily liquidity. I think if you look at 2021, we raised 3.7 million in private placements in 2021, but we traded $4.5 million in trading. So that just continues to show that there is liquidity for our retail investors in terms of, you know, listen, 4-month hold, great. You come in a private placement, there's a market for your shares, you know, if you need to sell. Yeah, there's, you know, if you look at, you can run some other charts. Here's a Yahoo Finance chart. I think a relative chart is looking at the stock accumulation. You know, we typically will run, you know, this is about a 16-month look back, but we'll typically run, like we're trading low, but, you know, we'll run to 12.5 cents. So, you know, that's our typical, that's our early stage. You know, this is when we were first getting started on these projects, you know, that's our high. And so I think it's pretty clear that we're at our low right now in a tough market. But there's some good accumulation that's happening at these prices. And, you know, again, our knowledge in terms of future discovery and resources is, you know, that's really something that we have in hand today in terms of how we believe, you know, the gold is structured of the project. So again, I think this is a fun slide. I think it's still relevant for the quality of our projects. You know, in 2020, you know, we drilled the 11th best drill hole in Canada out of all Canadian junior miners in precious metals, specifically gold. And this was based on Haywood data that was available for 2020, Haywood Securities data. You know, we weren't ranked just because we didn't make the top 10. But if you look at this slide, which is also on our website, we'll dissect this. You know, I think what I like about the Ardra results is, you know, if you look at the #1 ranked company, I think they drilled 120,000 meters, while we only drilled 800 meters and still got this amazing hole. So, and it was, the whole program was amazing. So, you know, I think, you know, that's a cool slide that we still like to keep in the deck. This is just an appendix for Fortune Minerals. Again, I talked about they're in the cycle of mine construction. You know, this is roughly an aerial view of 40 kilometers away what this future gold, cobalt, bismuth project looks like. They do have, you know, a lot of great things that they've done in the last several years. They've gotten an all-season road paid for by the federal government to connect all of these projects in the Northwest Territories. Nighthawk's project, Rover's project, their own project, right to Highway 3 and right to the city of Yellowknife. But they've also connected transportation lines by an existing rail and truck network. And they're working on really a refinery in north of Edmonton in Alberta. So, you know, I mean, so we obviously wish them the best of luck. Infrastructure in the area just kind of floats all the boats, if you will. So that is the end of the presentation, and I will open it up. I went a little bit longer than expected. I'll open it up really back to Will, and he can do the Q&A.
Thanks, Judson, and that was a very thorough and insightful presentation. We're now moving to the Q&A portion of the webinar, as Judson mentioned. If you are interested in asking a question or logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your question to us directly through the Q&A module. We'll now take a moment to develop the queue. Thank you. We did get some questions here. I'll return some prior to or during the conference. So if you don't mind, some of them are, I know you covered during your presentation, Judson, but maybe we'll just go through it again, if you want to elaborate or just check the box. The first question was talking about your 25% interest in the Uptown Gold project. They're just wondering, is there an agreed amount for Rover to earn that 25% option?
Yeah, that's right. It's 2.5 million shares, and Rover has to issue to Silver Range, which is the property owner. That's the payment. And we would have done it already, except just the way the agreement is structured is that the first option, which is owning 75%, there's a milestone to really do another, I think it's $750,000 in exploration work. That milestone needs to be met by Arctic Fox, which is the current first option holder. If Arctic Fox were to default on that, they've currently got until late in 2023. That would revert back to Rover. And given the success I think that Goldterra has been having since we, things changed, if you will, since we first assigned that option to Arctic. I think there's been a fairly substantial resource disclosure. So I think Rover would likely, assuming Arctic were to drop that first option, would Rover entertain it? Of course, I think we would, based on how things have changed in the last, 18, 20 months. But for now, Arctic is still working towards that first option. And, once that first option is completed, that's just when Rover makes the payment. We can't make the payment before that. We have to wait for things to kind of follow course. And that's why we haven't made the payment yet. But yeah, 2.5 million shares, it's a no-brainer, especially given the development work that's happened there with Goldterra, finally getting their resource out. It really has been a game changer, I think, for interest in the city of Yellowknife and that Yellowknife City Gold Belt. So
great, thank you. I guess the other question is that an investor has some questions around equity research. There was some reports that had come out earlier. Just wondering if you're still on the radar screen of talking to some of the analysts and whatnot. What the action is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really bringing a very sound geological model, for analysts, that's based on this drill program. I mean, now that we're really starting to understand that this is like a Sabina back river type of geology, and how important alteration in the iron formation is, like that's the model that we're building. So I think the results of this program set us up for that. If we're able to show, for example, that arrow zone, it's a typical discontinuous iron formation where it pinches, but then it starts again. And, again, we believe from the core that we've seen, the logging needs to be still completed, but the initial photos do suggest that. And so we haven't press released it yet. Logging's not completed. We don't have any assays, so there's nothing material to press release on it yet, but it appears to be the case. And so I think, that this program at Cabin really sets the stage for updating the model and bringing that model to the analysts. And, I think right now the coverage that we have through Fundamental, that's probably based on the fact where they rated us as a buy up to 19 cents. Well, that's because what we have reported to the market is 1,000 meters of surface strike length of grades, starting at 7.5 meters of 1.5 grams per ton, going up to 32 meters of 14 grams per ton. So, that's just all at surface. So, I think that's where it starts. But I think what's fair to be said is, do you get fair value per ounce in the Canadian markets when you're a sub 250,000 ounce deposit? You don't. And so I think for us, in order to start, hitting those analyst price targets, we have to actually get the ounces up, and then we start seeing fair value translate into the market, right? So, that's where we are. I mean, we're obviously marching towards that 250 as fast as we can, that 250,000 ounces.
Great. Great. The next investor would like to know if you or Rover will be participating in PDAC conference coming up here in June.
I've always found that the most business gets done at PDAC the week before. So yeah, I mean, I plan on being in Toronto the week before PDAC, which I think is the week of June 6th or 7th. I'll be in Toronto that week. We've decided not to have a booth, but that's just based on years of having a booth, and I don't necessarily feel that it's we're there to talk to analysts, to meet potentially with institutional financing. That's the goal, and so we're there to take meetings on Bay Street. Not necessarily, the goals aren't really to have a booth per se. I talked about wanting to do summer exploration. So, our focus in June is going to be, those kinds of meetings, if you will, which would be sort of the pre-PDAC week.
Got it. Thank you. And next question, does Rover management still believe that it's realistic to have expectations of maiden resource estimate for 3101 complete and announced in public domain by the end of June?
Yeah, I think that number that came from an earlier presentation. That's, we've updated our corporate presentation to change that. I mean, I think that was our hope when, I think when we were sort of looking in, November, December, and we were casting, goals for 2022. That was our hope in Q4 of last year. I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are guilty of being too aggressive, myself included. So, I think obviously in light of the presentation today, I've talked about that now sort of being a best case scenario for towards the end of this year, needing for us to do, a successful institutional raise in June and get back there this summer. That's the answer to that question.
Okay, great, thanks. And last question here, Judson. With the current challenges in financing for exploration projects and the softness in the market out there, is there any risk of Rover doing a share consolidation?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I talked a lot about the cost of exploration with Tobin and why we've been looking in Nevada. I mean, I talked a little bit about the presentation about 2019 being a year where we did try and chase down a project in Nevada. It wasn't the right one, but now we're there. And so we've been looking in Nevada, knowing it's a great place to do very sort of non-dilutive exploration work, if you will. So I think, with that model, and certainly Rover is open to, really strategic investors to help with dilution for Northern Canadian exploration. I mean, it's no secret that doing exploration work in places like Nunavut and Northwest Territories is expensive and it is dilutive. But the flip side of that is going into production, it's one of the best jurisdictions in Canada to actually go into production. So yeah, you may see the dilution, at the exploration stage, but the valuation, once you've got the proven ounces and going into production in terms of, this is where the diamond mines are in Canada, right? This is the number one employer in the north. So the valuation picks up, once the discoveries have been made and there's less concern on dilution. But I mean, it's no secret that working up in Northern Canada is dilutive, but we've got that offset addressed for, also working in Nevada. Share consolidation, unless there's a business combination and a merger that makes sense. If that comes as part of a strategic investor in the next few months or next 2 quarters, then so be it. But I think though there's lots of great examples of companies that have done business combinations and the share price has been, the share price appreciation has appreciated much more so than the rollback. So listen, we would entertain a good deal, of course, but that's not our plans this time for a consolidation.
Great. Well, thanks for the clarity. And thanks, Justin, for the presentation today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's webinar. And today's webinar recording will be made soon available on Rover's website. If you have any additional questions that have not been answered on this webinar, please feel free to email us at rover@rbmilestone.com. Again, that's rover@rbmilestone.com. Thanks again, and this concludes our webinar.